Hello, everybody. This is James Diboe, Discovering Season 5, dedicated to original peoples. And we got a special guest in today, Mr. Terence and Curtis.
Yo,
How you doing? Great to have you on. Great to have you on. It's been a
good
while,
evening.
but this is basically the part 2 follow-up of the original one that we did of you and Joseph Adekoya, Evolution vs. Creation. We're going to speak on this, but also going to expand it because I know Curtis watched it and he picked up the things that he felt he should have been on it. So we're going to start in the beginning anyway. Last time, Terence, we was talking about science. You were speaking about the supporting the Big Bang Theory, supporting that the evolution of us coming from apes as a common ancestor and them things and that. Now, are you still with that same thought, or have you looked into other things since that time? And where are you at now with it? Is it you still the same, or have you expanded your mind to think on different things?
No, in terms of evolution being the best explanation for the diversity of life, and in terms of the Big Bang being the origin of the universe and consequently everything else in existence, I'm still firm on them two foundational beliefs. I think they're solid in science and the evidence is irrefutable, but it hasn't always been that way. Let me just say it took centuries to get to where we are. And then, there was disagreements. People fought against evolution. People fought against physics for years, for centuries, the powers of the day, the Catholic Church. And eventually they had to succumb because, as I say, irrefutable.
Okay. Now, Curtis, what did you think of the last show we did, Evolution-Based Creation? And what did you feel also that you can add to it, if you don't hear from you?
Yeah, so first of all, I was very impressed with the conversation being initiated in the first place because, we need not to be looking at the surface of like human social interactions all the time in our modern sense. And I know that's what you're about, looking at, indigenous tribes and, origins of things. And I know we're all interested in that. I was jealous. I was jealous, man, because I wanted in on the conversation. So, I don't really think things have to be in complete conflict with each other.
Okay.
So that's where my foundation in this conversation lies, and I'll elaborate on that as appropriate.
Well, that's interesting that because, a lot of times when we go on the group chats and all that, we're talking about the ancient Kemetics and the Yorubas and how they were able to combine spirituality with science. It went hand to hand. It's like as if science had its place where we are now from the Western perspective. Now, speaking to Africans myself and speaking to indigenous peoples, the knowledge is not valued as it once was. This was like, if you look at like, say, even pharmaceutical, where would the scientists originally get their knowledge from the beginning? It would be a lot of these indigenous peoples who've got the knowledge. So it's like since universities are being put, in different parts of Africa and set up by Europeans and all that one. Even though we had all that universities, Timbuktu and all that, we've had all that, but the new influence of it, where the people who were the practitioners, who were the shamans, because these are people who used to look to for the knowledge, these types of people, but it seems like their knowledge is like made redundant since science. And I'm not underestimating science because science is good in a lot of ways. It's showed us like many different things in that. But what's your view anyway on where did we come from? If we go back to that,
I'll let Curtis take that one.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of the book Hero with 1,000 Faces by Joseph Campbell? He wrote it, I think it was the early 60s or maybe a bit earlier than that. But anyway, he was looking at Jungian psychology and he was looking at the structure of what we consider to be a story. So if you ever watched the film where it just doesn't end like a story and you're just disappointed, you're thinking this wasn't a story.
Yeah.
It didn't resolve and whatever. So like that's related directly to our psyche of survival and how we grow from being a child to supposedly being an elder and being wise, which is what is in nature, but we're a bit far from that as there's a lot of man boys and stuff like that, baby mans and all them, you know what I mean, nowadays, and people who won't really grow up. So anyway, when I look at these things, I think, well, if you look at orature, if you look at how you would have your griots, and I can't remember what they're called in Somalia, but poets are really revered in Somali culture. Again, the same thing as what was in Ireland too, and probably most Celtic societies, where there would be a poet of some kind, a
Mm,
sage, whatever, and they would memorize your whole family line that was passed down to them, you know, in initiation ceremonies and stuff. And they would be the custodians of the culture and the history and the art and everything all bunged into one, the
mm.
religion.
Oral
Obviously,
traditions.
yeah, man, and they've branched off into all what we've got now with our modern religions and things like that. Obviously, you can see it's allegory, basically. So the best way to pass down knowledge is if you tell it as a story, and especially if you make it rhyme or have a melody
Right,
to it, or all of the
right.
above. Yeah. So it's also with the recipes. When you see these tribes making these mixes of these complex recipes that they make, man, out of these all these different herbs and whatever for ceremonies and even food or whatever, they'll sing a certain song in a rhythm, and that helps you when you're pouring this certain thing in liquid, say a certain liquid, say put milk, you pour it to a certain timing of the song, so it gives you your measurements with the timing of the song, and they're adding different ingredients in a song, and you pass that down very precisely. So when you look at science, you know, food and things like that, that is science, isn't it? Do you know what I'm saying? So um, you know, I just think that that's what we're looking at here in modern times. It's branched off into very particular niche avenues culturally with people, depending on what people's environment is. What would be more important to you if you're living in the mountains? Would it be the storm god? That would be the
Yeah.
most important if you're in the mountains. If you're in the valley, it might be the river god. Do you know what I'm
Mm.
saying? So it's when you look at like the particulars of how people have interpreted things, and also passed down the knowledge of things covered without having to write
Yeah.
it down necessarily.
Key point,
Does that-
man. Let me just add as well to what you just said there about you know, like river gods and so forth. And I was talking about this in one of the WhatsApp groups a few weeks ago. Um, there was a god for pretty much every aspect of nature. You know what I mean? Whether it was weather, whether it was crops failing, whether it was fertility, and there was a god working behind every interaction. You know what I mean? Whether it be between humans or something that's happening in what we'd call nature now. But the key thing is, you go back to ancient times, there was no concept of nature. Everything was supernatural. And at some point, and I think this was a European thing, but I'm not sure because obviously history is complex and many people could have contributed. But I think, well, I know for a fact that at some point it was separated. The
Yeah.
science, the natural, what we could perceive to be natural order, nature, was separated from supernature. You know what I mean? And that was a key thing. That was huge because that was the beginning of modern science. You know what I mean? As we know it anyway.
But this ties into the God concept as well. Like, there's always been, especially when I went to see the Orange Asli tribes in Malaysia, they mentioned about, I asked them about God. That's one thing I'll always ask tribes about, because I just want to know, did you believe in God, or what was you doing, or whatever? So they base things on the supreme being. Now, every supreme being which I've come across will always have lesser beings, if you know what I'm saying by that. Like, if some people,
you know,
some
God.
yeah. So
exactly.
so there's different words, different people use. Religion might use this, science uses this. You know, so science could say energy, bad energy, negative or positive, and then some people might say bad spirits. For example, streets might say bad vibes. You know what I'm saying? So everyone, it's all the one thing though. And I think when we talk about a supreme being, this is not even a big thing what we're talking about. It's only the fact because people have said that Africans believed in this and that. They've given their own interpretation instead of having Africans speak for themselves. And how many percentage of Africa now and the world is Christian or Muslim or other religion rather than their own traditional?
Exactly. Transform the continent, man. Transform the continents, the Christianity and Islam.
In mass numbers, though, in mass numbers, I mean, how many people is there in Africa? Over the billion?
Yeah, you're talking like 80, 85%. So at
Easily.
least, maybe
Easily.
bigger.
Easily. So obviously a lot of things done through conquest, and also it's many other reasons why, you know. So, but what do you think of the God concept in, you know, we understand how the ancients believe things in that now. Where would you say you're at yourself? Would you say, do you believe in a supreme being or a supreme intelligence or something? What would you say you believe in?
Come on, Curtis, I'll let you go first because you're new to this discussion.
Thanks.
Just your own opinion, you know, like.
Yeah, I mean,
tough question.
It is a good question, and
well, Curtis' spirituality, you know what I mean, his own spirituality.
Yeah. I think that every culture, obviously, of human beings is you know, held to, you know, you look at the sky. I mean, remember I told you, James, when I was in that valley in South Africa, there was no artificial lighting for 1,000 miles, and it was just pitch black in this valley. We all got out to like stretch our legs and stuff, a convoy of cars, and then you could see the Milky Way like as if someone had got a paintbrush, a big broad paintbrush, and just drawn it across the sky. It was that white, and you could see billions of stars that you've never ever seen in this country, even in Wales or somewhere. And you look at that and you think, well, to the ancient people, we look at them as like balls of gas, burning gas. You know what I'm saying? Because we've been in the modern science era. To most of our ancestors, no matter where they were from, they've looked up and it's close, man. It's close to them. It's right there in your face. And it changes all the time. And some people map it over time and find out that there's these wandering stars, which turned out to be actual planets, which they named as gods, didn't they? Do you know what I'm saying? But when it comes to if you're talking about like a singular consciousness, well, I have this. This goes into sort of looking into a lot of like quantum physics and this, that, and the other, and spirituality and theism and all this stuff. But I've always been interested in this kind of stuff and adventuring through it. And I just look when you think about it, if for example, like I just believe that everything is conscious. Like something looking at us, any creature looking at you, another type of animal. It's called an Umwelt. Everything sees. It's a German word, and what it means is, you know, like in these stories, like that Sword and the Stone, King Arthur, and he turns into an ant. And in the book, I remember when they were reading it in school, they said he could hear everything, like in mathematics, coming to his head. That's how they perceived what it would be like to be an ant. And you would look at a human and see this big giant human. That's not what you would see things like if you were an ant. Everything experiences things in a completely different way. You're in your own universe. I'm in my own universe. Do you know what I'm saying?
That's right.
When you look at it, and I know this sounds weird, this is the bit where people probably like think, what's he talking about? I actually believe, right, this is what my current belief is, and it's flexible, but it's current, is that everything, and it sounds weird, like this pen and the plastic and everything is just part of the one thing. It's like if you took something, let's like look at single cell organisms, amoebas, if you look at evolution theory, you know, natural selection, starts as a single cell organism. They have mutations. Some of them become a bit more sticky and stick to the edges of the river or the sea. And then they start building into colonies, and then those colonies find cooperation and symbiosis. And then you end up with organisms developing. So I'm saying,
okay, we're gonna have to log back in, because we're gonna have to log back in because the time, unfortunately, has come to the end. So we're gonna log back in now. So we just let it run out and then we log back in. But it's same lesson. Yeah, so that's very interesting anyway. You know, what Curtis was saying before, speaking about consciousness, and now we can bring it back in on what you were saying, Curtis. So now, when you also mentioned consciousness now, do you believe in that there's death, or do you believe there's no death? It's just a body? How would you understand?
Well, for a start, I don't believe in ghosts, because why would you just hang around like closing doors and open them again and all stuff like that? Moving little toy cars around.
I mean, is there a continuation, do you believe? Like,
do you know what I believe, right? If you look at it this way, right? So if you were to believe in not necessarily the Big Bang or whatever, because no one that jury's gone out again since this James Webb telescope and all this, it's gone berserk now. Well, they found out stuff that shouldn't exist. So But really, if you just look at it anyway, you are we're all part of the infinite, because from the beginning, everything that's made you, if you were to believe in, rather than just being molded out of clay in the Garden of Eden, I do sort of go with the science for as much as I can, you know what I'm saying? And I look at it and I think, well, the science is very spiritual then, isn't it? Because it means every single occurrence that's happened since the beginning of the universe, if there ever was a beginning, or if it's just, well, you are part of that. You are just part of it.
Yeah, there's like a uniformity there.
Yeah, you wouldn't exist. You haven't just appeared. Everything that you're made out of has gone through a journey for like 13.8 billion years at least.
Yeah.
Because now it might be even further back than that. Or not at all. It might not have even happened that way, the way the Big Bang.
I mean, after death, you definitely remain in the sense that, the first law of thermodynamics says that matter can't be created or destroyed. So when you die, your physical being can only transform into.
Yeah,
so I'm saying you can only turn into something else.
Yeah,
that's physically though, but spiritually, I couldn't say. Like obviously on that one, I don't know. It's open for the.
Also, is an interesting one anyway. Terence, I know how Curtis I've spoken to him before on this. What about things like higher dimensionals? Like we're like 3D. You know what I'm saying? So can you see like, well, not what you can see on beyond? I know you used to be actually into the Bible. Actually, you mentioned last.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah. So I know you first was in that creation, and then you would start looking at science, didn't you?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you see like from where you was then and to where you are now? Can you see like where there's a missing link? And when I say the missing link, I mean like about that Big Bang theory and the connection with the Catholic Church, and what I'm saying. Carry on in me. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
tough, man. Edit.
And a higher dimension that like you can't see with the, with your eyes, I guess.
Yeah.
So what I'd say about that is I'd say it could exist, but the question would be how to like interact with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if there is, I think I said before I asked the question, if there's like I said, I think the only knowledge that exists is knowledge derived through science. Like I don't necessarily believe in sacred knowledge that's being given from an outside source. Like there's people all over the world throughout history that have claimed to have knowledge and a special link to something higher. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I wouldn't personally believe any of them. You know what I mean? I think it's basically a political move. I've got a connection, so now I'm going to be the leader. You know what I mean? And it's happened in every single culture, pretty much in every single part of the world. So I do believe that there's something there, but I don't believe that these people can tap in and explain it to you.
I think where the problem's been in the last, I don't know, maybe a couple of 100 years, possibly even, is when you're going around any villages or whatever, one thing that's always definitely introduced is money. So someone to say, well, we're going to teach you, like a fortune teller. We have the fortune tellers. So you'll have certain people telling you that, pay, and he can give you what you want. And
exactly,
yeah. So that's what's come into it very hard, the money side of it. And I was actually watching someone speaking about African spirituality the other day. He's mentioned that like a person, you shouldn't have to pay someone. The only thing you should have to pay for is materials. It was actually, or you can do a favor. So now it's all just about money. Anywhere you go, you can go anywhere in the world though, and you're going to get that. So, but anyway, so Curtis, anyway, I know you were like speaking about dimensions and them kind of things.
There's a guy called Donald Hoffman. He's got a team of like quantum physicists, cosmologists, astrophysicists, and computer modelers who do the way they model the weather by doing thousands of different versions of what could happen. Then they get the mean probability of what it's going to be like. It's never 100% accurate.
Yeah.
So they do this they create these creatures in a computer simulation, right? And they have different like parameters. Like one of them might have one arm and two short legs, or whatever. And this they'll create a tree with a piece of fruit in, and this one might not be able to reach it, but it might be able to stand on the back of another one, which is dead steady, and this, that. But you just let them do the thing. They program them to try and survive and find food and survive. And then they look at what they do, run hundreds of thousands of these models, and they figured out that basically what he's trying to figure out is what is reality, because we're looking at everything through the filters of our brain, and what your brain's job other than to run your nervous system and everything, and everything. Your brain's job is to create a narrative. Your prefrontal cortex is there to create a story as to who you are, what environment you're in, how are you going to survive, what's dangerous, what's good for you, and all those types of things. You create a narrative of your identity. Do you know what I'm saying? So it is a construct. And just like if you're playing a computer game, if you play it long enough, you really think you're in that game as that character. You feel it in every, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Footy player, soldier, doesn't matter what it is. And so what he's trying to say is, if people ask him, I've watched so many hours of interviews of him, right? And what he's basically saying is, we're just like, what our filters are designed to see the color spectrum that we see. You know what I mean? Other animals can see the spectrum, you know what I'm saying? Infrared, ultraviolet. Then you've got bats with echolocation and dolphins and all that. So they're experiencing things completely different to what we are. You know what I'm saying? So we think that what we're like the pinnacle of what awareness is and consciousness. But everything, I just believe everything. I know it sounds weird, but everything's made out of particles that are very mysterious. You know what I'm saying? And if you look at that, we're all made out of that, and everything's made out of combinations of these things, including us.
So see, like when you got like the ancient Egyptians, how they lived thousands of years ago, would you say that humanity's declined? I don't mean as far as like, technology's gone great and all that, but do you think that humanity has declined from ancient times?
I think
Some ways.
Yeah, go on, Terence.
Well, if you could speak on it.
What do you can you be a bit, what
I mean,
like, in mind? What kind of things do you think about?
I'm looking at like the kind of knowledge that people had thousands of years ago, including health, including or just even as far as like farming and people's nature. You know what I'm saying? Like people, it wasn't about like, more greed is coming to the planet. You know what I'm saying? More greed is coming, more deaths. Not saying deaths never happen, but it's even the health is like a big part of this stuff. A massive part.
Yeah, it's like a mixed bag, isn't it? Because in some ways we were a lot healthier back in ancient times.
And the people were more self-sufficient.
Self-sufficient.
To be able to survive.
Subsistence farmers,
yeah,
better food. You know what I mean? Less pollution.
That's right.
More village and countryside life as opposed to crazy cities, because pollution's bad. It's underrated. It doesn't.
Less heart attacks. Less.
Exactly.
Certain things that and stress.
And we've seen what they achieved in terms of architecture. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Pyramids never being replicated, nothing being built, nothing greater anywhere in the world. So we can't say they've we've advanced in that sense. Definitely, they would seem to be more advanced than us. So yeah, it depends on what thing. It's 50, could be 50-50.
Yeah. So that's an interesting. Well, Curtis.
Yeah, just I think, like, if you look at Britain, and this is controversial when people say things like this nowadays, but if you look at Britain, and if I was to imagine all my ancestors, like, say if you believe in natural selection, evolutionary theory, if you believe in that, when I say ancestors, I'm talking about every single living creature from amoeba, and even before that was created, the chemicals that made it, if that was what happened, and then it split and that's evolved. Like, I'm talking about everything that survived long enough to procreate, that's ended up resulting in me. That's a bizarre concept to think of. Every creature that's evolved into another creature and eventually into humans, modern humans, that's a chain. It's an unbroken chain. And you're related to trillions upon trillions of different beings that experienced life in a completely different way than you did until modern humans. And then the modern humans that were our ancestors in the days when you were out in the wilderness back in the day, they didn't experience life like we did at all. We looked like some kind of weird robots to them. You know what I'm saying? The way we think and the technology we've got and everything. So I don't think technology has been lost. Well, technology's been lost, but I don't think it's regressed. I think it's progressed massively. And I celebrate living in Britain, believe it or not, because I know a lot of people say, oh, I hate it here. But I was like, well, go and try and live somewhere else and see all the pros and cons and bring me a list of the pros and cons. And then decide. If you haven't stepped outside the picture, you don't know what the picture looks like. I mean, you take it for granted.
Yeah, well, right now, obviously, Britain, yeah, but in the future, you know, this could be a place everyone's going to be fleeing from. You know, I mean, everywhere has the day, and Britain's wealth built up from the world, isn't it? Especially Africa. You know, so a lot of these pros and cons are being put in place. Unfortunately, not saying it was just a perfect place, but the Western world is at the forefront of everything, really, you know.
Remember, we were discussing that though, and I was telling you about where geology comes into it and geography.
Yeah.
You know, like the type of topsoil that you've got, the type of building materials that are available to you, how accessible are they?
Yeah.
You know, if you're in a place where it's granite everywhere, you're gonna have to work harder to build anything, aren't you? So what I'm saying, if it's sandstone or limestone, you know. Anyway, so everyone is just done with, because that's the amazing thing about humans, isn't it? We've got a system and we can apply it to different, like the way we're in cars and things like that now, going faster than you could run. And I used to think that when cars were first invented, they thought that if you went above 40 miles per hour that your body would explode. They literally thought that, scientists. You know what I'm saying? Look at us now, race cars and all that, 250 miles an hour and all this. Airplanes.
Well, I mean,
so,
to be honest,
we're well advanced. I just, you know what I try to do? Celebrate it in honor of every living person and creature and happening of the universe that created me. I just celebrate, here I am now and I'm conscious and it's my turn on the planet for a bit. You know what I'm saying? And then, you know, like we said before, Terence, man, are we going to move on? Are we going to vanish? What do you reckon?
It's
extinction.
I don't think it can be answered, the question. You know, I'll have to say, like, I'm agnostic on it, which literally means, like, there's no knowledge to say either way.
Yeah. Well, funny enough,
truly agnostic.
Remember you were talking about you were into the Bible and that, and then obviously that speaks on an end times, of course, and most other religions speak on an end times.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, science kind of, there's different theories.
Science does have an end time story.
Yeah, it does.
When galaxies collide.
Okay, yeah.
That'll be the end. And there's one coming towards us, the Andromeda galaxy. It's traveling like at ridiculously high speeds. And we're on a collision course with it.
Oh, so you're talking about the end of Earth, not the end of the universe?
Well, yeah, sorry, the end of our solar system, our galaxy.
Okay, yeah. But what about the sun expansion? Wouldn't that come first before the Andromeda?
I think the sun has got about, was it 2.5 billion years left or something like that?
Something along them lines, yeah.
And I'll have to check the dates. Do you know what? That's a good question.
Exactly
that's a good question. The sun might burn out before Andromeda even gets to hit, so there won't be any Earth to destroy. That's a fair point.
You won't be able to fuse anymore, to have the fusion energy.
So there's definitely going to be an end. It can't go on forever. That's a fact, scientific fact.
What about, have you ever heard of Roger Penrose?
Yeah.
So he's got that. He came up with this thing that he used to disagree with it, and then he came up with it one day where he says that basically what's going to happen is if the universe keeps expanding exponentially, like what's been observed, which again is up to question now because there's James Webb, they're not quite sure about but anyway, he's saying, well, it's going to get to a point when gravity, because it's one of the weakest forces, is going to let go of everything, and so everything will become photons. And when everything's a photon, which are identical, they'll become a singularity. There'll be no time or anything because nothing's got.
So we'll go back to the beginning, basically.
So then it just keeps expanding. So maybe it just doesn't. It's just something that, because it will have no size, because everything will be the same in it.
Yeah.
Just photons, identical photons.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So that's his theory, and it's pretty eloquent. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm.
It's because it's a paradox. No matter what, there's no way out. There's no. It's like trying to look at the parameters of what represents the monotheist God. There's a book called the Puzzle of God, and he goes through chapter by chapter. It's a thin book, really, but he's a modern day philosopher, and he's saying, you make one version of God. It's like a slide puzzle. You have to sacrifice one thing for another. You can never have the perfect God because it doesn't ever make sense fully.
Yeah,
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 there's
of
all
course.
like omniscient and omnipotent. Why are you bothered about people burning a piece of meat for you? You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
things like that. It's
Oh no,
and
I
then
think
yeah,
the gods in the Abrahamic tradition have got like conflicting, what do they call attributes?
well,
You know what
I
I
would
mean?
say I've been looking into this that theoretically now. I think Yahweh, if you want to call him, Elohim, which actually means
Mm.
praying to El, which was El was the Assyrian god, wasn't he?
El was a god, definitely. I think he was a
Yeah,
Canaanite god, but I'm not
oh,
sure.
one of them, yeah.
Mm.
No, he was from Mesopotamia or Assyrian. He was
Yeah,
definitely.
possibly the
Yeah.
crossing over.
He was the main god, and
Yeah.
anyway, I think that when you look at Exodus, for example, and loads of the Old Testament, God's wrath comes as storms and fire and clouds. Yeah, he's a storm god. He's based on a
Storm god, you know.
he's based on
Nice.
a
Yes.
storm god,
That's
bro.
heavy.
So he does
Yeah.
to the Egyptians. It's always storms, the wind and the fire and
Do you
all
know what?
sorts
I've heard this. I've heard this before that he was part of a pantheon,
a
and he was
pantheon.
the god,
Yeah,
and he was the god of war. Sorry, is that what it's
everyone had
called?
their own god out of the pick a god out of the pantheon that would represent them. And when they split off into
It's true.
sub
It's
tribes,
true.
yeah,
Yeah,
and that's
It's a
what
true.
people did.
problem.
They had a standard and they had
Yeah.
symbols and prayers and do you know what I'm saying? So, and this one is one for the New Testament, isn't it? So Jesus, yeah,
Oh no, he's
is
going after Jesus.
it's not even go. I would never go after the big
Come
man,
on.
the perfect man. You know what I mean? No, but no, but what I'm not going after. What I'm trying to say is that my theory is, but Barabbas, yeah,
Oh yeah.
Barabbas, yeah, terrorist against the occupation of the Romans in Jerusalem. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? He was a hunted man. He had a mob of just men who wanted to represent the Judaism in a pure way. They didn't want to deal with all the intellectual big the Pharisees and all of them.
Yeah.
With all
That's
money
right.
mad in it, taking gold off the. So
But check
anyway,
this. Go on. Sorry.
yeah.
Carry on.
So when this at that very same time, they coincided. Like the Jesus we know from the New Testament, he arrived, the hippie Jesus. You know what I'm saying? And then and Barabbas. Now both of their names, right? Barabbas's name it was Yeshua. Sound familiar?
Wow.
Yeshua.
Yeah.
Yeshua. Guess what Barabbas means? Bar, which means son of. Abbas, which is Hebrew for father. His name was Yeshua, son of the Father, right?
Wow.
Now, there's this tradition going back even around the world of sacrifice. This for every culture,
Human
Ireland,
sacrifice. Yeah.
Americas, this, that, and the other, everywhere. If something's going wrong in a certain way, you will be like sort of be sent to intercede with the gods, wouldn't you? You know what I mean? You'd be chosen. You get maybe some psychedelics and having some ceremony. But anyway, so there's been this tradition of the resurrected God, the resurrected God man. It was obviously Egypt. Do you know what I'm saying? You go through
Oh
the
really?
world.
This is a worldwide thing, is it?
This is it's all over the place. If you look at Zoroastrianism, if you look at Mithraism, if you look at a lot of different other Persian like sort of cultures that with similar ideas of this. So there's a guy called Apollonius of something beginning with a T.
Tyre.
Yeah.
Tyre.
And he's got a somewhat sort of similar Messiah story to him. And even when he disappeared, people would see him, claim to have seen him after his vanishing in different parts of the world.
There, man. There's a lot of parallels there.
But check
it
this,
just goes back. It just goes back the same culture.
When we're dealing with the God concept, I'm going to move it on now to before like religions and before. So I want to talk about a tribe that I met myself, the Maasai tribe in Kenya, and they're around Tanzania. Now they refer to Engai as their god, and they explain there's two gods, and then it's like there's a bad god, good god. So basically, it's tying into the force of nature. You know what I'm saying? Before people said there is a devil, because there was no, in Africa, no one was talking about there is a devil. Yeah, people talked about their supreme being, but it was not like, so it's like later on, it seems something's been separated where they out of this force, which is good and bad. Now, I'm not a religious person, but I'm aware of, like you said before, about the conflicting good God in the Bible, you were saying, Terence.
Mm.
And I'm sure that's in other religions as well. You know what I'm saying? The good, the bad, you know what I'm saying? But you still worship it. Do you get what I'm saying? So where we want to go from it is like, there's all sects, like we talk about the Nation of Islam. And then we was also talking about the Nation of Gods. And there's all different sects. And some of these sects believe that God and Satan is the same person. So some of these might deal with some beliefs, what Africans believe, you know what I'm saying? Where, and then some of the other things might be put there or changed or something. But a lot of these certain things that the Nation of Islam talk about, it does relate to a lot of things in Kemet and what was going on.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that we have to go along with every single thing, like the 66 trillion years and stuff, you know. It could be, I don't even think we can give a timeline, which we spoke about last time when they were saying modern man's 200,000 years. And then before that, the common ancestor with apes. I wouldn't even put a timeline on it. Doesn't matter if you're the top scientist expert.
Yeah.
You know, so what you think?
Because we have to accept as well that the age of the universe keeps getting older as we get older, you know what I mean? So like you said, in 1,000 years, how old it's going to be, like when we've advanced from the James Webb telescope, what's next? Could be trillions, but we just haven't.
Yeah. So the reason why I brought up this yet was because when we're younger, we're youth, people are telling us about God, whether it doesn't matter from your parents, doesn't matter from school. So your image is being created. We live in the UK, so your image is being created. If you lived in an Islamic country, that's being created. If you live in an African tradition, wherever you live, that's being created for you, isn't it? That's become your reality. So as we get older now, and we look at like, well, we got told of God and the devil. Now, don't get me wrong, we can clearly see there's evil on the planet and there's good on the planet. And I'm sure one of them represents, but then you can look at it and think, well, speaking to the Messiah, when they put across like, well, the good and the bad. And that was more seemed like reality because it was connected to the force of nature, it's connected to the weather. Like if you look at the weather one day, it could be huge hurricanes. Next time it could be nice sunshine. So this is just these, you could call these aspects, because these are forces to be reckoned with, that you cannot ignore. This hurricane when it's coming, you can't ignore it. So it's a force to be reckoned with. You know what I'm saying? But
if you look at Catholicism, Catholicism, well, in a sense, they do have a pantheon of gods.
In Catholicism,
because they have the saints, and everyone prays the different saints and all that. Look at the Mexicans when they crawl along the floor and they go to that shrine to Mary, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they're almost like lesser gods, like what Dibbs was saying before.
Yeah,
the saints in Catholicism would be the lesser gods of Christianity. Definitely.
No difference.
Well, it takes a certain person to read the scriptures like yourselves to be able to point out that, because certain other people in religion, they ain't pointing out these things.
Because people, because people invest a lot in it, and I understand if you're really, embedded in something culturally or psychologically, even spiritually, you don't just want to let it go over a discussion or anything like that. Even a book or a documentary, it's not going to change your mind because
Well, I'll say that these beliefs are stronger than any truth you can come up with, because truth doesn't defeat them. You know what I mean? I've seen people like certain sects and certain religions, where they believe things that are categorically untrue. Like demonstrably false, where there's just no debate. There's certain things like that, but they still like. Let me give you a good example: a 7,000-year-old Earth. This is what young Earth creationists believe. So it's like we know that's not true. So it's like, why still believe it?
Fossils are a test from God.
Exactly. That's the answer. That's what I've read. The people were actually saying that. That's what they were saying.
Absolutely.
I've met a lot of people who said that 6,000 something odd years of humanity on the planet, and And they do. You wonder where does this calculation come from, though? You know, someone.
James Ussher comes from Bishop James Ussher. I think. What was he around 6? Well, do you know what? Like you said, it might not just exist in Christianity. There might be other religions that believe in young Earth. You know what I mean? But I know in the Christian tradition, it came from a bishop called James Ussher, and he literally calculated the age of the Earth, God's creation, to the day. He said, September 26th, 4000 BC, and literally 3 o'clock, literally courtesy gives the exact time and all that. Yeah, and that stood. It stood for centuries until modern theology kicked in. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying. He was a bishop and a scientist. So, you know, he was like, that's it. And they stood for years, them estimates.
Now, what about spirituality? Not versus religion, but spirituality and religion. Because some people believe it's just the same thing, and some people believe, no, it's separate. What's your view?
And we've had that for years. Kenneth had it, didn't he? And we're going to mix them together.
Yeah. So what do you think about spirituality and religion, the difference?
I think that what we do is so we all think spiritually, and pretty much all our ancestors must have thought or been in a system that was spiritual in some sense. Again, because you know, we look at things on maps on the telly and that, and looking at meteorological surveys from satellite images and this, and we take it all for granted. But this is like, people didn't see all this from a bird's eye view or a satellite eye view. It's just like it's happening to you.
Exactly.
And so, you know, like I was saying before about stories, the best way for humans to quantify things is to create a narrative for them. And so you give things personalities. You know, like you bang your head on the corner of the cupboard and you slam the cupboard door like it's the cupboard's fault. You know what I'm saying? Like as if that's going to somehow take your pain away or whatever. You sort of feel like, even though you know it's inanimate, it's got no feelings, you're trying to take your anger out on it, like as if you're hitting it back. You get me? We anthropomorphize things and give them like personas. We personify them as being like us, and even when, you know, something like a teddy bear for a kid, you think it's real. You know it's not real, but you convince yourself it is, because it gives you a way of bonding. And they all have their own jobs, don't they? These gods and whatever, and spirits, and people who are into angels and all these type of things. They're just trying to, because instead of just thinking of something abstract, it's how would you describe these things if you couldn't give them like a personality? So you make the river a personality. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, you say, okay, the river's pleased with us, going to feed us this year. You know, the banks are going to swell up, man. We're going to fertilize our crops, and you know what I mean. So I think it's just that's what humans do. Our brain, our prefrontal cortex, is made to make things make sense to our survival.
Patterns. See patterns, even when we see patterns when they don't even exist.
Absolutely, like pareidolia, isn't it? When you see a face in something, it's not a face.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, I think if you look at religion, it's more strict. You see, it's where it's science you can change your mind with the science. You know, maybe later on, science proves something different.
It's about disproving things. Yeah,
with religion is it's consistent until another doctrine comes out. You know, like, because how many Bibles do you have out? How many Bibles is the? I don't know.
Yeah, this is just they've been doing. It's King James. You know, when was that? They've been doing them since then.
Yeah, so if you're living in them times, and then it's getting changed, and then you're living in different times. No consistency with that. To be honest, probably Islam would be the most consistent up to now, because there's only one actual book, isn't it? The Quran. You know, even though they might have the other little is it I don't know what.
Yeah, they got the Hadith.
Yeah, they got them. But the main book, supposedly that hasn't been changed. But there's not other Qurans flying out there the way you've got all these different Bibles.
No. There's many translations, but there's only one version.
But in you know, they did just like the Council of Nicaea with the Bible, with the New Testament. They went through loads of edits. They did.
I've never heard it. I always thought there was one Quran, one text.
No. It changed, bro.
You mean Birmingham?
If you look at the history of it, it did change. During
to be fair, I've never looked into that actually.
During Muhammad's life, they had they had a council, and they had scribes, because don't forget, Muhammad was illiterate.
That's true. That's true.
You know what I'm saying? So like you know, it was more, what it is look, it comes to this, doesn't it? When you're a monotheist, right? Again, they're more pure to be a monotheist. They're more committed to saying you couldn't have a son or anything like that if you're the real, not God, you're Allah, which is a difference beyond God. Because God's just like God and Christians, just do a capital G of something that's normally applies to loads of different beings, you get me? So you know, everyone, it's evolved. And don't forget, a lot of the early Quran is based on Genesis, and then the Abrahamic. Do you know what I'm saying? So,
well, to be fair, it seems like it's the same God.
It's an evolution.
Right the way through.
Yeah,
you know, from the Bible into the Quran, it looks like it's the same God. But there are some differences.
Don't forget
what you just said about Jesus.
Don't forget the Torah before that. You know, so
this is what I'm saying, man.
It's a follow-up. Then Kemet before that. You know, you see a lot of the virgin birth, the immaculate conception there.
In a sense, you could look at the Quran as the Third Testament if you wanted to.
You got the Ankh, you know what I'm saying, with later the cross. You know, you got everything there. You know
when you were saying about God and devil and all this, Satan and God, whatever, you know, like, but it's either Shatan or Shadan, isn't it? Depending on which, like, some people say it different. And you know what the actual translation, they say it means adversary. It doesn't actually mean that. It's more of a natural force. It means the thing that gets in the way. That's what actually the literal translation would be in English now. Yeah, the thing that, so when the devil's at work, nothing works out nice for you, does it? And you're vexed. Do you know what I'm saying?
A very bad day.
Your world is crumbling. You feel like evil is surrounding you, trying to drag you somewhere or something out against your will. Do you know what I'm saying? That's what it really means. It's the spirit of everything, the nature of humans, the nature of the elements and the environment that you're in, the nature of water and everything. Do you know what I'm saying? The forest that you live in, wind, everything, the mountains, the volcano that you might be at the foot of.
Well,
that's mad. That's interesting because that's simplified it even further, because what you said there about the adversary, about Satan being the adversary, I have heard that as in some kind of translation from Hebrew, but obviously, it's even in the book of Job. Let me say it did quick in the book of Job, when Satan comes for Job and he sends plagues and all that, and he terrorizes him. God sends him. He doesn't come as an independent. Yeah, he doesn't come as an independent force from the underground. He literally works for God. So in that sense, like then he becomes, you know, like a Hasatan. He's a Hasatan. Yeah. But then that Hasatan becomes Satan with a capital S. You know what I mean? But if you go, the further you go back in the Bible, like basically there's an evolution of Satan. If you read the Bible, Satan evolves.
So what's Hasatan?
Yeah.
I mean, what's Hasatan?
That's basically like a lesser devil.
Oh, I see.
You know what I mean?
Like a lesser being.
A demon.
Yeah. Like a lesser evil. You know, so it'd be, and then you can get the capitalized version. It would be like the ultimate. It would be Satan with a capital S.
It was like a court system, wasn't it? Was that the book of Job?
I think you know what very important.
I think so.
Yeah, you know what very important thing, like you said before, about the environment. You know what I'm saying? Because you got people there, and like we talk about environments. The environment we live in today, we're not the most healthiest, or we're not the most in tune with nature. So these people, what they ate and how they lived, they seemed they were in more in tune with, if you want to call it the other world or whatever. You know what I'm saying? You can call it nature. But like these people seem to be able to figure out everything based on feelings. Sort of like a guitar, for example, or playing a piano, all these different notes. You get what I'm saying? So it was like they'd figured out, like, observing just by looking at the animals. They could figure things just looking at how ants strategize.
We haven't changed though. We haven't changed though. It's an illusion that we've changed. Our environment's changed. That's all that's changed.
I see a lot of people change. A lot of people change.
No, I'll tell you what I mean, right? If you took one of those people you're talking about, right, and you just transported them through time, right? All you've ever seen is jungle. Let's say they live in a jungle, rainforest, right? Ancestors, and you bring them here now. You transport them here in the middle of town, right? They won't know what a traffic light is. They won't know what a car is. The brain wouldn't even know what the concept of any of those things were. Yeah, but because we evolve in our, that's what our success as humans is, that we're adaptable to environments more than any other species. Well, maybe single cell organisms are better at it than us, and that's about it. Do you know what I'm saying? Humans,
yeah, like extremophiles and all that.
yeah, so we're using the same strategies and everything, but in a more complex environment now.
Yeah, just using technology in it on top of, like you said, the raw material.
We go up mountains into Wales and all that for simplicity. You go camping to experience simplicity because it's in our nature, because nearly all our ancestors lived like that. So
it's also, but what you understand is just you've traveled yourself, so you know, even like being in the places where the sun is, you're living a lot better. You always live better. I don't mean you'll get a better job. I just mean you're living better, healthier. Everyone looks healthier when they go in the sun. And
well, do you know what?
We look at the winters. We only have to look in the mirror when we look at our winters, and we see, well, we don't look as healthy as we did in the summer when the sun was out. That's obvious. I know there's melanated people. We're of the sun, aren't we? So
yeah,
you know. Imagine, look at like
born in the tropics.
Look at the guy who wrote the book about, and this is a European himself, Michael Bradley, about the environment in Europe, and he wrote Inheritance of the Iceman, and he was explaining that their environment was harsh, so they had to be harsh, otherwise
to survive.
You wouldn't have survived.
Yeah, but that's even not just on a geological scale like that, on a sort of geo scale, I should say. I think even in a smaller state, look at Eastern Europe, right?
Yeah.
You don't have rivers. They don't have many rivers in Eastern Europe at all. There's a couple of, like, handful of rivers. Yeah. Look at Britain or the UK as a whole, including Ireland. There's so many rivers. Do you know what I mean? Even flat to the land that you can use to offload cargo and things, and export and import. It's easy. And near the coast, this is how lucky Britain was, near the coast, right? Around most of Britain, there was iron ore right next to coal. So they could just make iron from there and then to build things. And that. You know what I'm saying? So it's sometimes just the happenstance of the environment that your people have grown up in.
Oh yeah, it's all about luck, mate.
Yeah, man, it is. It's just random in it, because we're such good survivors. It's not like, oh, no one will live in those. No, you'll find some people living up there in their mountains, man. You know what I mean? In snow.
Look at the crops. Look at the crops that, if you look at the, we look at the first two great ancient civilizations of Egypt and Mesopotamia. They were built on the same 5 crops, like peas, beans, and the 3 other ones I can't remember now. But if you look if you look across the same latitude, the northern latitude,
we're coming there.
They grow well there.
We're coming very shortly to the end, anyway. So we keep on going.